Sentry mode activated. Target acquired.
Hey there, hunters, and welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Today we're going to talk about Alatreon and how to gun him down with, well, guns and bows. I'm going to break this into a few sections, the first discussing the two sides of Alatreon and the setup we're going to be using for each weapon. The second will be his attacks and how to manage them with each weapon. So let's just go ahead and do this thing. First, let's go over our game plan. Now obviously the best way to get through Alatreon is to lock it to one element. You do this by breaking its horn during the dragon phase. It's not that tough, it's like fucking wet paper. So with this in mind, we're going to be focusing on a single element for our weapon choice. And obviously the element you want is going to depend on the element Alatreon starts with. Either element works, it's up to you on which you prefer. Fire Alatreon has much faster attacks and overall is a bit more hectic, but exposes its face more and gives you more straight lines to shoot down. Ice Alatreon is slower, but has big cone of cold jank, flies more, and throws pillars which just fuck up your positioning a lot. Personal choice, but I prefer ice except on light bowgun. Anyway, let's start with bow. Ice is slower and more preferable to me, however Ice Blight does ruin bow runs, so I understand people not wanting to go against ice. Fire Alatreon's main problem for bow is that the breath and trident lines will one-hit KO if you're too close. We're going to go with ice because we can also just negate the Ice Blight with blight resistance, and since we're going to be running Kiara Firebow sets with Safi pieces, the blight resistance is not really going to be that big of a deal. We can just slide in one more and we're good to go. We ignore it all. Another thing we're going to need to add is paracoats to our bow. We want this because it'll allow us to take down Alatreon out of the air during the dragon mode, which is going to save us a lot of headaches. The rest of the bow set is pretty standard 5-piece Safi. The bow's main plan is to just dump arrows into his face and keep the head tenderized. While the body is a better raw hit zone, the elemental zone is pretty pitiful. For light bowguns, we have two options. The better is Pierce ammo and just dumping raw into Alatreon's chest. You can run either Pierce 2s or Pierce 3s. Pierce 3s are a stronger option but come with slow reload, and that is very difficult to manage in this fight, at least as solo. Pierce 2s are not quite as good, but it's a much safer fight since you can just run and reload at the same time. You don't really need anything special for these sets, just our standard Pierce setups will do just fine. These also work on both Fire and Ice Alatreon. However, Fire is the preferred choice here because it has more openings where you could just stare straight down him and pummel Pierce into his chest. The other option is to go with Elemental on Alatreon's light bowgun. You can set up for Ice 6 Fire 3 or Fire 6 Ice 3 depending on what state you have, and either option is good. This is great for group play as well since you can handle the elemental thresholds for the team. Your plan here is to take your elemental ammo and shoot either the front leg to body to back leg, or through the legs front to back, or through the tail to wing. Tail to wing has a bunch of space, so you do a lot of extra ticks, but it's not the best elemental hit zones. The front arms are best for that. If you're doing heavy bowgun, well, I wouldn't recommend it. It's really fucking tough. Pierce 3 is basically your only option for the same reason as light bowguns, except you can't walk away from any of the attacks. If you're running heavy bowgun, there's literally no reason to run elemental. Light bowgun just does it better at this point. Now if you're in a group, you can make do with a shield Pierce setup, but you do need to rely on others to take care of the elemental escalation or you're all just going to be boned. While you can use shield heavy bowgun solo, you end up spending a lot of your time just blocking hits and not really getting any damage in yourself, so light bowgun ends up being faster in that case. So if you're solo, I would just run light bowgun unless you're really comfortable with heavy bowgun. So those are our setups. Let's just get into the hunt. To start, we have the roar. This is very much like Teostra and Kushala's roar. So like them, they will raise their hands up and you have a slight roar buffer. You can dodge it as soon as you hear the sound of the roar and you'll be golden. Or you can watch the pause and dodge when they're at their peak. If you're using a bowgun, you can actually dodge the roar as you land and immediately claw the face to start the tenderize and enrage. Bowguns do have longer claws than other weapons, so sadly bow and other melee weapons can't do this. I do recommend starting with the enrage turn because Alatreon has a flat 20% damage taken increased while he's enraged, which is very nice. Alright, so Alatreon attacks. Let's see if this makes any sense. Both elements basically have the exact same pattern, just slightly different attacks. So both elements have a basic move that can chain into another attack. For ice, this is going to be his little ice cubes attack. He will shoot 3 little ice cubes straight at you. If you're more than a couple rolls away from him, you can easily just walk away from this. Even heavy bowgun can just sidestep it. It's a good attack to get in some free damage. However, it's got fast recovery, and Alatreon will follow this up with another attack very fast, so be careful. Don't use power shots right here if you're bow. Ice also has this attack where it does it and jumps to the side to shoot cubes. It also has a fast recovery, so expect the follow-up. For fire, it's the fire trident. God damn, I fucking hate this attack. He throws an initial glob at you, so the impact point will move depending on your position. If you're super close to him, you can usually just walk forward to walk away from it. Otherwise, you're going to need to get in between the lines. If you're heavy bowgun, you're screwed at medium range. Close up, you might be able to walk forward, but at medium range, you're going to have to iframe it. If you're far away, like, long range mod far, then you can just strafe it to the left or the right and shoot while you avoid the lines. This is Alatreon's chain attack, so he does follow this up with another attack very quickly. The second attack Alatreon likes to spam is his breath weapon. For ice, it's this giant cone of cold that reaches across the map. It gets bigger and bigger the further it goes out. Sticking close to him is the easiest way to avoid this, as the cone gets obviously smaller at the base. Otherwise, you don't really have much of a choice here other than to just roll out of it as fast as you can. Rolling towards him and to the side is preferable rather than going directly to the sides, because the further you're out, the bigger that side is going to be. This attack is the bane of heavy bowgun unless you're running full evade extender, and I do recommend to run full evade extender. Now, light bowgun and bow shouldn't have too much of an issue with this. Bow is obviously not going to care about the blight once we put in blight resistance, and light bowgun could just walk away from it. Fire Alatreon's breath weapon is his single fire line that he shoots directly at you, and it's got a really tight hitbox, which is very nice. Bow and light bowgun can easily just walk away from this attack while shooting, and this is where things like Pierce really like Fire Alatreon, because it's just a long attack that you can stare down the straight in front of him and just pew 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 pew. Heavy bowgun it's kind of a toss-up. Sometimes if you're far away, you can strafe away from it, but sometimes you can't. I don't really know. It's rough, man. I fucking hate doing this with heavy bowgun. It's not reliable to strafe away from, so you're probably gonna have to dodge this. Both of these attacks have a large amount of end lag, so you can just pummel into Alatreon here. There's only one more unique attack per element on the ground phases. Ice just chucks more ice cubes at you very fast. They come out in a burst of 2. The first burst is a nice even split of 3, so being slightly offset to one side of his face lets you avoid this. The second part of the burst is 5, but there always seems to be a hole in the middle, so you can avoid it by just moving back inward. My depth perception is fucked on this attack, and I can never tell how far away those things actually are, so it's a real pain in the ass for me to dodge. I just try to get in between the ice cubes at that point. Fire Alatreon has a close range glob it spews. The initial glob can hit you if you're directly in front of him, so try to stay to the side of his face, which is basically the key point to this fight in general. Now, after the initial glob hits the ground, you have 2 choices. You can roll into the center after the first explosion and keep damaging Alatreon, or you can roll out of the 3 rings. Now, if you're gunning, you can shoot him from there too, so it's not a bad option. For melee, gotta stick inside. Alatreon doesn't do any more attacks after these until he's entirely done, so you have plenty of time to pummel on him. He does one of those little roar taunt things. Now, what's common to both of these forms is dragon and lightning attacks. For dragon attacks, it's basically all melee stuff. We have the claws. It's a really slow claw swipe he'll generally do if you're up close to his side. He uses it really to reposition him to stare at you. Not much to say here. It's an easy dodge, just get away from it. He also does a head slam in the same position. He'll just kind of, ram his head into you. This attack has a deceptive hitbox because close up, it's pretty easy to dodge to the sides and you can keep your damage up. But the head tip charges with dragon energy and it makes the hitbox much larger around the head, so try to avoid that. Heavy bowgun will need to roll this if he's at, medium or long range, but otherwise you should be okay to strafe. The double head thrash is also an easy attack to avoid. He does take a step forward between these attacks though, so don't stand still while he's with you with the first one, because he will tend to whiff with that first one a lot. Just keep stepping backwards to avoid the second swing or just roll through it. This is a good opportunity to reload as well. The last dragon attack he does is his charge, and like all monsters, it's very annoying. He's got mix-ups on this too. He can charge once or twice. Now we notice that twice he will stop early and turn around to come back. It's really fucking fast too. There's not much you can do other than just expect it to happen and be ready. Typically though, you can strafe if you keep moving through both the dodges, but it can hit you if you're too close. He can also follow up attacks with this charge and will sometimes do the jump first and dive at you. Again, very fast. Definitely going to be rolling to the sides. Don't stand near the head. The hitbox there is a lot bigger than it appears. Alright, the last 3 attacks he shares with all his forms are his lightning attacks. The first is going to be lightning circles. Now when he does this, there's 2 patterns he uses, and you can tell what's going to be by the way the lightning radiates. If it's pulling inward, then the circles will start from the back and come inward. And if it's going outward, then the circles will start close to him and radiate outward. Good news is that both these patterns are set in stone, they're not random at all, so they're pretty easy to learn and abuse. Right next to his head is pretty much a safe spot for the most part. But other than that, you can just watch the circles and be ready if you know what direction they're coming from. Now the second lightning attack is his lines. These are really fucking annoying for heavy bowgun. He will throw down 2 lines normally or 3 when enraged. These will either go parallel to you or perpendicular. It's totally random, 50-50, have not seen any sort of pattern yet. Now you can avoid these pretty easily by walking in a diagonal line, then moving the opposite direction to avoid wherever they land. Heavy bowgun can roll the first one and the second one at the same time if you roll at an angle. Then you can walk and reload away from the third one if you're walking at an angle initially and then just running perpendicular to wherever it spawns. These hitboxes are super tight, luckily. Now the last lightning attack he does is to use to make space. It's circles but in a line. He'll generate a big line that will burst and then make a new line in front of it and keep going and keep going. This one is actually pretty easy to dodge. There's enough time that if you stand at the edge of a circle, it will explode and then you can just walk forward ahead of the next line that should start behind you, or you can just iframe through it. It's a pretty generous hitbox, to be honest. There's really just a ton of time to avoid this attack as well, and he's totally exposed the entire time, so the sooner you get through that line, the more damage you can do. And honestly, he's got Tio's tail swipe, but fucking whatever, he never uses that. Just hug his butt, it doesn't even hit you. Okay, so that's the ground phase. He's going to mix up these attacks constantly, and it's up to you to get through it. There's not a whole lot you can do to stop him, since his stagger and clagger values are obscenely high, and his status thresholds are also very high. You get like 1. It's not much, but a get good fight. It's just, you gotta power through it. Now once you get him down to like 70% or so, he will start his air phase, and he always starts it the same way depending on his element. He either uses his chain attack, so for ice, the ice cubes, or for fire, the trident, then he jumps back into the air. During this phase, he's pretty much got the same attacks for both elements. First is the projectile globs. Ice throws more ice cubes, which is annoying because they create more pillars, and fire throws oil globs, which will ignite and leave fire pools behind. They're not really that much of an issue. These have the same patterns with the 3 and 5 bursts that have the same gaps to the sides in the middle, and then he also does this in a rapid fire version where he starts from your left and just shoots glob after glob as he sweeps across to the right. I hate this attack because I fucking can't see it due to depth perception. It's just non-existent. Now you can roll under him, which seems to be the best way to avoid it, or you can just try to sneak into the gaps of the shots. I can't really tell where they're going to land. One other last way you could do is just, if you're close enough, run all the way to the right side and then you should be safe. But, I hate this attack still. Now many a times he's going to follow up this attack with his breath weapon, which again has 2 variations. The first is a straight line, easy enough, walk away from it, no big deal, even heavy bowgun can do it. The second is the spiral breath, which is annoying as fuck. Depending on where it starts in relation to you will determine how fast you need to dodge inward. Never dodge outward because it wraps back around, it will always fucking catch you. Just dive into it, try to get right underneath him if you can. This attack gets me like 9 out of 10 times because range tends to play at perfect distance where it just spawns right on top of you. Good luck with those. Now he does also have the Teostra, breath sweeps back and forth kind of thing. I don't think that's an issue at all. Like, there's so much wind up for that, and you could just roll right through it and have plenty of time to just wail on his back. He's also got a few dragon attacks in the air as well. The first is the dash, which is no surprise, he fucking loves dashing. Not much to say about this one, just get away from it. The second one is ground pounds. He will do these twice or 3 times when enraged. Also, if you get hit or already on the ground when he does this, he just stops. You can easily evade this by walking perpendicular to him as he's doing this, or heavy bowgun could roll away from all 3 of them with 2 rolls. Be careful about rolling forward, the hitbox is a little big, always roll slightly to the side, seems much safer. And the last one is he's got his tail whip. This comes out in 2 strokes, the second one having deceptively large range because he actually moves his body forward when he does it. You really got to back up away from this one. And obviously you don't want to get hit by any of these dragon attacks if you're running element because it puts dragon blight on you, and that just ruins your element. Alright, so one attack left in the airborne state, but it's also shared with the ground state, and that is his AoE. When he's in the air, he will do his breath weapon on the ground and create a large AoE around him. He's got several different ways he can do this attack, but for the most part, melee can just tank through it with health augment, and ranged can just walk away from it. So he can do it from the ground state and then return to ground. He can also do it from the ground state and stay in the air. He could do it in the air state and stay in the air, or he could do it in the air and then land. It's all based upon his HP thresholds and whether or not he needs to transition to his next phase. And then obviously the other way he can end his airborne state is by dashing down into you, and he usually does that when he needs to transition to dragon. So typically after he's done with his flying mode, he will go into dragon mode. He might get 1 or 2 swings in, but he goes into dragon mode like right away. During this transition, he will do a Dragon Nova that has fairly small AoE, but it will hurt you if you get hit by it, like it'll straight up one-tap a gunner. While he's in Dragon mode, his elemental resistance are significantly lower, and he will have access to his entire move pool. Your job here is to break a horn so you can lock him into the first element you started the hunt with. He does have 2 new dragon attacks in this mode, both being Novas he can use on the ground and in the air, and they have a really big range, but that's about it. So when solo, he typically finishes the dragon phase at about 20% HP, then it's judgment time. If you fail to use element, then you're going to get insta-gibbed, nothing you can do about it. Otherwise, you should be okay to heal through the judgment. If you're doing the solo at this point, you probably got at least 2 or 3 topples, and that's enough to just power through healing. Honestly, not sure how you can fail this check solo if you're using any elemental weapon. Now in a group, 1 or 2 people using element should be able to handle it, then 2 can go for some raw for that fat damage, but this is going to be up to you guys to coordinate. Now once he's done with this judgment, he's back to his original element assuming you broke a horn, or he swapped to the other element if he didn't. Then it's just rinse and repeat from there. That's basically the whole Alatreon fight. I hope you learned something, thank you all for watching, and good luck out there hunters and whatever you may be hunting.